You may have seen this city before, but many people have been asking me, Dimoff, how did you build this wizard tower? Or potentially your Colosseum? But most importantly, how is Tidus so damn cute? And I can't answer all those questions, but I'll try my best. But of course, before we get into the video, this is Dimoff Gaming, I'm Dimoff, this is my best friend Tidus, and welcome to the channel. Now before we actually get into the kingdom, I think it's pretty important to show you guys how we found the location for the kingdom. And so we loaded in, but clearly not looking like this guy. And 5 minutes later we made it. Now of course when you start the game, you look at the map and you realize, man, I know nothing and I have a long ways to travel. And of course we did. Now I did this all with my buddy Luke, but Luke isn't here, so Tidus is going to be the substitute. So of course I looked at Luke and I said,
"Are you prepared for the most glorious adventure that we have ever known, brother?"
To which he replied,
"Why do you sound like that? But yes, I'm ready to go."
And so we set off.
Oh wait, gotta use the bathroom.
And so Tidus, aka Luke, set off. But this wasn't his first rodeo. He knew he needed additional adventures to make the trip. And this is where he met the other dogs, dwarves. And now that all of our heroes are together, it was time for them to set off. But little did they know what treacheries lay ahead. Crossed rough seas full of serpents. Fought in battles that they had no reason to be part of. Other than, of course, for Frodo. Hell, they even got to ride on eagles. Just like this guy, except he looks a little bit hurt. Wait, what was that? Oh, they didn't even give a damn? And yet all that matters is after that massive adventure and tons of side quests, they finally found the land of our kingdom. Luke was beyond ecstatic when he found a lake with an island on it completely surrounded by the ocean. Look at all the different places he had to travel just to find this location.
Have returned from the bathroom. Now are you ready to set out on our adventure, brother? Well, the thing is, we kind of already found our home base.
You see, the thing is I was only gone for about 5 minutes, and Luke only traveled from about here to here. But once he showed me the base, I completely agreed it was perfect. Now that we have officially arrived at Jargenhargen and docked at the shipyard, I think the first building I should show you will be the shipyard. And yes, although quite embarrassing for someone who sailed their whole life, I did put a steering wheel on my Viking shipyard, which doesn't make any sense because they steer their boats controlling the rudder by hand. Back when I was building this base, there wasn't a whole lot of different light sources, and so by utilizing the item stands and the diverger helmets, I was able to light up my bridge blue as well as my shipyard. Although that's the first building that I showed you, it is not the first building that we made. As you can see on the map, there's a perfectly safe island right in the center of the lake that kept us safe from all the bad, everything. And so this is where we first built, and this was the perfect starter base that had everything we needed to really get going in the game. Right here in the center is where we kept all of our sorted loot. We had every station needed for crafting, as well as everything needed for a forge. Above the dining hall in the main building, I actually wanted to add the Yggdrasil tree, I'm the same person that also spelled kernel and bologna. Now, one of the most important parts of our starter base is the fact that we had a dungeon, prison, I don't know whatever you want to call it. Either way, if the tide rose high enough, you would actually drown inside of it, so not a good place to be. Alrighty, moving on to a happier deal, we decided to expand our base beyond the island that we started on. Now you may have all the crafting structures that you need, but you still need a way to sustain your life, and so, next thing that we worked on was a farm. And then of course you need somewhere to sell all of your goods, so the next thing I created was the market. Now I had some fun when creating my market, especially with the names of every single store. As you can see here, we have Bartholomew's Beauteous Berries, and behind it, Tidus's Tactical Tools. Next is Baldwin's Barbaric Bakery, Sabina's Soup, Sir William's Weapon Shop, Joffrey's Goods, and last but not least, Mazzelina's Magnificent Meats. Now, of course, in any kingdom, you need somewhere to eat, so that's why we created Troll's Head Tavern. I also want to mention that this was all made about 4 years ago, so many of the structures that are in here are all older, and we didn't have any of the new structures to add to the building, but I still love the old value that it has. Now, some of you may have noticed that it says Hegan Hogan to your seat, and when I created this sign, there was no one in the game named Hegan Hogan, but eventually my friend did name himself that. The only funny part is, he died there and then never resumed to play again. So having the sign that says Hegan Hogan to your seat and the dead body there, I think is perfect. I just leave it. Going from the water all the way up to actually where I have my keep is quite a scale and elevation, and this was before there was any modding or any sort of creative mode, so I literally had to spend months actually digging out this entire mountain and cutting down every single tree. As you can see here, my buddy Titus is helping me do so. The next building we're going to look at is actually one of my favorite buildings I've ever made in the game, and many of my friends' favorite as well. This is my kingdom's Wizard Tower. I wanted it to look like it was a tree coming out of the ground, as well as have an elven touch from World of Warcraft. I personally think the building looks much better at night and really helps the green pop out, but let me know your opinions in the comments down below. Hello everybody and welcome back to part 2 of the Kingdom of Jargenhargen. After posting the first video, I realized I showed you guys how Titus found the location for the Kingdom of Jargenhargen, like so. But then I realized I forgot to actually include the video that shows you how you enter the kingdom. See, if you remember this picture right here, you'll notice there's a tiny inlet between the ocean and the lake, and so after mining and drowning numerous times, we were able to make it deep enough for the second largest boat in the game. And then I proceeded to dock it without a single issue, of course. And now I'm stuck. But do not fear, it only took like 10 minutes to get out. See? Easy peasy with no hitches, and then we sailed right into our shipyard. By the way, this is what I had to do to get the shot before entering the city. Enjoy my pain. So I wanted to back my boat up so I could give you a good view of the kingdom as I approached, but turns out trying to go forward again after backing up takes a while. In my mind I was hoping this is what was happening and at any moment I was about to take off, but instead it just took about 5 minutes and I finally made some headway. Alright, now let's get into part 2, but before we do, here's a sneak peek of a few of the things that you're going to see. I'll go into detail for each of the structures, as well as show you a couple of the hidden gems around the base. Alrighty, for the very first structure we're going to look at will be the Colosseum. Now you may look at this and think that I planned it out, but I had no plan going into this Colosseum at all. My second one I had a much better idea. For this one we basically started by flattening the ground, putting a log in the middle so that we could extend out logs every single direction to know how far we wanted to go and to create an actual, well, circular structure. I knew I wanted a way to enter for the gladiators, the spectators, as well as the king and queen. When entering, if you go to the left or right up the stairs, you'll enter to where the spectator seating is. And if you took the hallways instead, you would end up where the king and queen sit. I also want to mention that at this time, I did not have the technology for iron beams, and so this whole thing is put together with stone and wood. But at the end of the day, it created for some pretty fun fights in this arena. Right in front of the Colosseum, I wanted to have an area where it looked like gladiators would be practicing, or at least two different sides could fight against each other before actually entering the Colosseum. And on a fun side note, here is an actual working sundial, and yes, as the sun goes along, you can actually go through each of the different times. I did put the original Nordic language in there, and I just think it's a fun little touch to my city. Now it only seems fair to go to my second Colosseum after showing you guys the first one, and oddly enough they're actually the exact same size on the outside, but the actual fighting area on the inside varies quite a bit considering the boats need more room. When entering the Colosseum on the left and right, you can actually get off and walk around inside of it, as well as take a full boat through the actual center. And if you want to see the king, you can see him right here. There he is. Now, although I haven't renovated the inside of this Colosseum, you can see that there's a lot more room, and that's because I use steel beams. Now, as you can see, there is a lot less seating, unless I guess you wanted to watch from the inside, but there are actually stairs leading to each of the seats. This next building makes a little bit less sense for its location, and that's because it's a lighthouse, but there didn't used to be a Colosseum in the water, and so there was a large gap of water in between the entrance of the base and actually where our marina is to the left of the lighthouse. This was also the first time that I wanted to experiment with building stairs on the outside of a building and seeing if I could protect them with the roofs so there wasn't any rain damage, and it worked out. Now, many of you may have noticed the cluster of chests sitting right underneath the lighthouse, and that's because when I built 90% of this entire kingdom, it was before creative mode existed. And so you'd see little old me running around with carts that weighed like 2,000 to 3,000 pounds, trying to take them upstairs, and I almost never had stamina because all my time was spent crafting opposed to actually making my survival. And so when trying to go upstairs, you would oftentimes have to run back and forth like this until you got up them, wait until you get stamina again, but it was a struggle, yet we made it. And so I'd load everything up in those chests, and then I would go back and get more. Once I felt I actually had enough materials to make the building, then I would actually, start the construction, but that's after I would maybe do, 10, 15 of these trips. Also, as you can see, I just walked maybe 100 feet. I would have to take these thousands of feet. Looking back at the marina next to the lighthouse, you can see I made different slot sizes depending on the boat. Thankfully, it's enough for almost every single boat except for the brand new one that goes to the Ashlands, but it's a fun little area and I think it adds a lot to the village. Now, this might be confusing having a boat on land, but if a giant wave comes in while you're placing a boat down, you can put it on land. There's also a store down here called Mary's Marina Mart, which makes sense considering if you've seen my market, almost every single name starts with the same letter. And the last building is just a small hut. I was still experimenting with the new walls and structures that they added to the game at the time, but it still adds to the marina. And moving on to the next building, we're going to be looking at my Church of Eikthyr. If I said that correctly, I hope I did. Now, if you're just looking at the church, it does look like it's quite demonic. The red eyes that are right there, as well as the pasture having red eyes, don't exactly seem too welcoming, and the black marble doesn't help. But if you look beyond all those negatives, and you just look outside, the actual trees and nature that we added are beautiful. Just try to avoid the satanic rituals that might result in something like the movie Antlers. Now here's a fun little part of the base that you might have actually already seen, but not actually noticed. You see, this actually used to be an animal farm right on top of the regular farm right below. But the problem is almost all the creatures in the game scare each other or want to fight each other. So you can't exactly put them in pens next to each other or else they freak out. Especially lox because they destroy your base. Now we used to actually have quite a few lox, and we still do, they just don't stay at the base anymore. Instead they're in living conditions that I would rather not show. But we did have Lox of Love, Lox of Anger, and Loxosaurus. You can pick who you think did the most damage to the base. Now the reason for the animals being at that location was because I built a small tunnel right behind it, and that tunnel would lead all the way up right next to the Colosseum. Problem is I didn't have the structural stability at the time to build into the Colosseum without it all falling down. So I built this little wraparound, but unfortunately with the animals not working, my dreams of having a Roman Colosseum with people fighting animals never came to fruition. Alrighty, the next building we're going to look at is a very important one that Valheim players know. It's a portal base, and that is a place that you're going to keep all your portals to teleport all around the world, as well as keep all of your loot from your adventures. Although it may be tiny, hidden throughout the entire base is actually 24 black metal chests, which is more than enough storage for anything that you'll ever do in the game. Now, right next to the portal base is an armory. I was wondering how I was going to make this, and I eventually actually resulted with an outdoor idea, which is not what I ever thought an armory would look like, but I actually really like how it turned out, and it adds to the portal base. Over here I've been working on digging out the water, and I'm thinking about putting a small village with little huts on each side, and then it even has access to the outside of the base, although it is not far from the main entrance. And last but not least, we're going to look at the Great Wall of Jargenhargen. For this wall covers a vast amount of area on the map. Crazy enough, this picture doesn't actually include the full wall that encompasses the entire city. Instead, the wall starts at the left side of the lake right here, goes northeast, and then comes back down southwest over here. If you just finished part 2, you'll realize we covered quite a few things, such as my amazing ability to sail. And now I'm stuck. My boat drag racing. We also covered my first Colosseum, my water Colosseum, a lighthouse, my marina, a portal base, as well as a church deichther. But even better, we got to listen to the way I pronounce roofs. Protect them with the roofs. It's not interchangeable like dwarves and dwarfs, but apparently I used it that way. Also, I just learned that we have Tolkien to thank for the dwarves part. Alright, moving on, we also watched me struggle to get upstairs, and then proceeded to hear me brutally mispronounce pastor there, as well as the pasture having red eyes. We also covered how mean locks are, even if you own them. Especially locks, because they destroy your base. Now, I did mention this. Instead, they're in living conditions that I would rather not show. But I think it's unfair to not show you guys, so here it is. See? They can't hurt anyone in here. And I thought they couldn't get away except for, this little sneaky guy.
Ha 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 ha.
I also showed you guys my secret tunnel, and I don't know how I missed this opportunity, but here it is.
Yeah, I forget the next couple lines, but then it goes, Secret tunnel, secret tunnel, through the mountains, secret, 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 secret tunnel, yeah!
You're welcome for that. Also, that TV show is my entire childhood. But now that we've had our fun reminiscing, it's time to get into part 3, so here we go. The main focus of this video is going to be the keep, but the keep itself is actually large enough to be bigger than most bases, and it even has its own defensive wall to guard itself. This is where we produce all of our honey, but also you can see below the tower actually dug down quite a bit. And the reason being for that is because of structural stability. Most buildings can only go so high, but as long as the ground is there and you dig it down around the building, it looks like it's a taller building. You may have also noticed my death right there, and that's because back in the day there didn't used to be a cape that would let you fall slowly off of buildings, and so I, while building, fell probably 200 times. I checked the map to see what day I died there, and turns out that was day 887. Now Valheim days are 30 minutes each, so 30 minutes times 887 days equals, oh god, what have I done? It actually equals 18.5 days in real life, so you better like my kingdom. Alrighty, now let's get into the details of the base. First thing we'll look at is actually the walls. I wanted the walls to be accessible from the keep to the outside of the base, and now from a defensive point of view, that's a terrible idea. When you enter the keep, you're going to notice there's a bunch of buildings on the left and right. These are going to provide all the basic crafting necessities for your adventures. On the left is going to be our kitchen. On the right is all the forges with the downgraded forges on top. And then right in the center is where we had most of our portals and all the crates to keep everything for the adventures. Again, on the right we have Frederick's Fantastic Forge. And on the left we have Waldo's Wonky Workshop, and above it just a cartography table with no special building name. Continuing up the stairs, you're going to see I have a lot of filler buildings, and that's something I realized when you have a base that is this massive, is you're going to have a lot of details and things that may not have a lot of purpose, such as that little structure or my wolf that I designed. An important building that both the Greeks and the Romans had was the bathhouse. Now there's a Viking base, but that's besides the point, so here's my bathhouse. When entering, you'll notice on the left and right there are 2 vents for the smoke, as well as in the middle. This will keep the bathhouse nice and warm and steamy, and at the same time provide plenty of ventilation. There's both a hot tub on the right and the left with an armor rack, so you can take everything off before you get in. Unless you like wet armor, I mean, that's up to you. But let me know what you think of my bathhouse in the comments down below. Alrighty, now let's move on to the keep inside of the keep, I guess? And then we can look at the king. I mean, look at him over there. Just check out his massive muscles. I mean, look at me. I'm just flexing all the time. That was not on purpose at all. He just did that. On the left, we have an industrial-sized kitchen where you can brew all the mead that you need. And we even have ovens for a bakery. Pretty much anything that the king would want. We even have a bar with plenty of heads on top of it, so that you know that we are hunters. Going up the stairs even further, we're going to have an area where the king and queen sit, but this is also one of those large areas that I didn't really know how to fill. I do have tables on the top for plenty of seating, but there's also a lot of blank areas still. I could fill it with more tables, I guess. Right in front of you, you can see my favorite archway I think I've made, because the pillars actually follow the angle of the roof. And then above it, of course, there is an open area where you're able to see from the floor above. and yet another room I need to fill. I mean, pretty much this entire side of the keep needs to be finished, as you can see. And that would be the keep of the Kingdom of Jargenhargen. If you did like the keep, please let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I want to thank you for watching the video and following me all the way to part 3. But before you go, if you did like the video and you do like my content, please give a like and subscribe. It'll really help Titus and I out. Thanks again.